let's talk Dolphins. And
Yep.
it's difficult to just talk football about them. Raheem Mostert won't be playing. The question about Devin Achan's availability is up in the air right now. And clearly, defensively, them being as healthy as possible is very crucial, et cetera, and so
Yep.
on. But it's it truly is all about what happened to Tyreek Hill before
Yep.
week one, and the lingering effects on the team. And
Mm-hmm.
Tyreek Hill came out and said he wants the police officer that manhandled him fired. And
Yep.
that's really, I imagine, all that's being discussed down there in South Florida. What is your reporting on how this did affect the Dolphins prior to the game in week one, and how much it does, in fact, linger for week two, Albert?
I think it rallied them. Like I really do. And I know that sounds weird, but I think it did rally them. And I think one thing that was really meaningful, and I think that this has been sort of like swept into the rugs the wrong way to put it, but I think it's an important element to it is the other guy who was on the scene. And that's Calais Campbell. And I know, Rich, you've been around Calais, right?
Oh,
Like a
yes.
bunch.
Love him.
Like that is one of the best, not just players of the last 20 years,
Humans.
one of the best people
Yeah.
that's come through the NFL over the last 20 years. And like it's just an A+ guy. And so I think the fact that like he was involved in that and somebody with the credibility that he has got caught up in that made it even more of like a rallying thing for that whole group. Like, okay, like something tough happened to our teammates this morning. Like we got to show we have their back. And I think it's sort of plays into the culture that Mike McDaniel has built there. I mean, one thing that's so interesting is like that Tua negotiation could have gotten ugly this summer, right? It never did. Well, why? Because of the relationship that Mike McDaniels has with Tua. And so I just think the relationships in that building right now, the in that building is really, really strong. And so in a weird way, you never want to see
Of course
happen
not.
what happened before the game,
Yeah.
regardless of your own thoughts on whatever anybody else's thoughts are on the circumstances of it. And I know a lot of people have thoughts on that. But I do think in a sort of an interesting way, it galvanized the team around those guys, and not just around Tyreek, but also around somebody like Calais, who is as respected as any player in the NFL, and any player in the NFL, I'd say over the last 15 to 20 years. So I just think that like again in kind of a weird way, they fall behind in that game. They have to rally, right? Like they're kind of disjointed a little offensively early on. They're able to get it done. Tyreek has the big play. Um, I actually think there's been some positive that's come of this, for that locker room.
Yeah, Calais Campbell, the 2020 Walter Payton Man of the Year of the National Football League, is who we're talking about right now. And the conversation, if not for this, would have been about Tua and his comments to Dan Lebitard about the previous coach and Brian Flores and Mike McDaniel. And I think that you're seeing what you're saying, like kind of weaving it all together here. McDaniel's control of the locker room and his comments as well, and how they are playing out, is something, I guess, turning something into a positive in that regard. But it'll be interesting to see that as a backdrop of the Thursday night game, which is between two of the three, I might add, and they're not the Jets, 1-0 teams in the AFC East right now. It's a pretty big game you've got tomorrow night.
And what's cool about it too is like if you look at the way that week one played out, weren't their games mirror images of each other, right? Like so they play an opponent that most people think they're going to beat. I think most people thought Buffalo was going to beat Arizona and was going to beat Jacksonville, and both teams got punched in the mouth, and both teams showed resolve. And they showed resolve. I think I think seeing it on offense for Buffalo was big because of all the new pieces on offense and because Steph's gone, right? And then I think for Miami, it was big seeing it on defense because there is no Christian Wilkins anymore. There is no Jerome Baker anymore. Xavier Howard's gone. Vic Fangio's gone, and Anthony Weaver's come in. And so, like, I think, like, just the growth of those two units, like, that's going to be an interesting part of tomorrow, too, is, like, can the Dolphins defense and the Bills offense carry over the way they finish the games on Sunday into, again, a short week and all the rest of it. It'll be really interesting to watch.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.